tell these cells how to assemble into an organism. Almost said orgasm. Not talking about orgasms, talking about organisms. Welcome to TBDK, the show Too Busy Didn't Know from me, the Go-Go Joe show, here every Wednesday, where I take the best startup, science, technology, and business news that you probably didn't hear about and inform you so that you can be in the know, you can be woke. And today I got 10 stories I'm going to go over. I got programmable organisms called Xenobots. It's pretty rad. We got scientists that are growing tear glands that cry in a lab. Weird. It sounds very science fiction-y. Any shocking Ebola news that I can tell you is not good news. Photoshop, super resolution, new feature to upscale your images with incredible quality. I got holograms on the cheap in your phone. What did I even write here? Oh my God, I can't even read my own handwriting. Headphones that measure your heart rate and other bodily functions just with headphones. Deepfake detection using our eyes. So seductive. We got LED clothing. Amazon gamifying their warehouses. And finally, I'm going to end with Wikipedia fighting Google. Knockdown blows. It's time for Wikipedia to grow up and put on their big boy pants and get paid, baby. All that and more on today's TBDK. Welcome to the show. So here we are, TBDK. Thank you for joining me. You can find this show in a variety of forms now. It's on YouTube. It's meant to be a visual show, but you can also listen to it on Spotify as a podcast or wherever you get any of your podcasts. So if you're listening on podcasts, definitely check out the visual component on YouTube. Also, trying to put this out as a newsletter, TBDK. Tell your friends and subscribe to it. You can go to tbdk.substack.com to get the newsletter delivered to you every Friday, so I can have at least 2 days to put it together as when it comes out. But here on Wednesdays is where we do the YouTube version and maybe the sound version as well, if that's when you're listening to it. On Wednesdays, the show used to be called Window Wandering Wednesday because, as you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, we're looking out of gorgeous windows as I talk about this stuff. And today we've got England. It's a nice sunny day overlooking cliffs of England, it looks like. It's beautiful. Check it out. Head over to YouTube. But let's get right into it. The 10 stories, starting with number 10. We'll do countdown style. Although that's going to be confusing because on my notes, I started with 1. Regardless, number 10, programmable organisms. Now this is really cool, which is why I wanted to start with it. They're called Xenobots, and they're the world's first programmable organisms. I already read the story, so you didn't have to. And what's going on is that there are scientists taking frog cells, pretty much, the embryonic cells, the stem cells of these frogs, and they are able to, with a computer, tell these cells how to assemble into an organism. Almost said orgasm. Not talking about orgasms, talking about organisms. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me the one of the renderings, I guess, and maybe even it's through an electron microscope here so that we can see it, but it is a horseshoe-shaped organism, and these things are floating around in a petri dish. They can move around. It's pretty incredible, and the scientists, I'm going to scroll down here so that we can see it. The scientists are using almost what looks like voxel technology, like what you would have in Minecraft. So Minecraft all has a bunch of voxels, which are these volumetric pixels, and they're using these voxel type inputs to tell the organism what shape to take. And then what happens in the petri dish, the cells organize, and there's a computer reading it or an algorithm that is monitoring it, and they are pretty much destroying any of the cells that aren't lining up the way that they want them to, and then propagating the cells in the correct shape. So after a couple life cycles, which is very fast apparently, they can get a shape of an embryo or a cell structure the way that they want it. And this is pretty incredible because these are technically living organisms. If you read into the story, they talk about how some of these organisms living in a petri dish will kind of jet off in a direction and then randomly come backwards. back to where they came, and it's like they have some sort of free will. And so in the article, they discuss a lot about what is life and what is free will and what is all this stuff. But it's pretty crazy that we can start to kind of make organisms the way that we want them to work. And there's also a lot of talk and speculation that we could give these organisms payloads so that we could put them inside of our bodies to then go to like cancer or go repair something and do some directed objective because we can kind of control not only what shape they're in, but also what they do. We don't fully understand it yet. They seem to have some sort of free will or kind of sentience as groups of cells. We don't really know why they act the way that they do. Like, honestly, we all start as a bag of cells and then we grow into this thing called a human, and we're not sure how everything kind of knows where it should go, like our fingernails versus our eyes versus our kidney. And so they're kind of also observing this in the lab and learning how cells kind of self-organize themselves and communicate. So it could be a big breakthrough on lots of different levels, but they're called Xenobots. The article is fascinating, and whoever wrote it, she did a really good job of breaking it down to a simple level for someone like me or you to understand. So definitely check that out. But programmable organisms are here. Maybe in the future we'll have programmable orgasms, but until then we're gonna have to just accept programmable organisms that can hunt down stuff inside of our bodies and do cool shit like heal us or destroy viruses or seek out cancer, among who knows what else. They also talked about, throwing them into the ocean and letting them eat plastic and all sorts of things, which is actually kind of scary because if they do mutate or get out of control, then what? It's a living organism. It's not actually a robot. Pretty crazy. And on that same note, though, moving right into the next story, number 9. Scientists are growing tear glands in a laboratory. And this is becoming really exciting because scientists are starting to take bioorganic material like receptors, such as smell receptors or visual receptors or tear glands, grow them in a laboratory and stimulate them to do whatever it is that we want them to do. In this case, it's cry. So these scientists actually placed these tear glands, these tear ducts, in a petri dish, and if you have the visual behind me, if you're listening, it looks like it's just a picture of a bunch of like little liquid bloops in a cell through a microscope, in a petri dish through a microscope, and they're just kind of expanding, meaning like the center is where the gland is at and it's crying. We can see them secreting liquid through a microscopic view. The cells shed tears on the inside of the organoid, causing it to balloon up. So we can see the organoid ballooning up, filling with liquid, and that's what's going on in this experiment. So they took the gland, put it in some sort of bag, organelle, and then it cries, and we can see it ballooning up because of the liquid is what happened. But this is really cool for a variety of reasons. So we can, for tear glands, they're talking about curing illnesses like dry eye syndrome and a bunch of other genetic disorders around your tear glands. But for me, what's really interesting, and shout out to Radiolab, because this is kind of where I heard it, or maybe it was on Today Explained. It was one of those two podcasts, but they were discussing how there is a scientist, oh my God, there is a scientist or a group of scientists that have trained dogs to sniff out cancer. So we actually don't know how smell works either. Speaking of not knowing how things work, we don't know how smell works. And so they've trained dogs to sniff out cancer because apparently everything gives off a unique odor, and these dogs can sniff out breast cancer, for example. And there is a scientist attempting to do this with making an electronic nose, so making an e-nose. And to do that, I believe they took like nose glands from something, maybe a mosquito or something else, placed them in petri dishes, grew out these receptors, and then they hooked it up to electronics. And the crazy part is that we can actually make these receptors work with the electronics using specialized computer chips. And that's pretty crazy. Or maybe I'm confusing two stories and these scientists did it purely electronically, and there was another one that did something with mosquito cells and they didn't think it was going to work if they hooked it up to a computer chip, and it ended up working, effectively creating some sort of cyborg. And now I've confused it with these dog sniffing things. Regardless, they should actually take someone's nose glands, or like a dog's nose glands, hook it up to electronics. Maybe they could even teach it to sniff out cancers, and then take that, hook it up to electronics, throw it through some like supervised machine learning, and bam, we've got an e-nose that is actually the receptors of a dog hooked up to a computer chip. That shit is crazy. I wonder if they're actually doing it. I don't know if they are doing it, but if not, they should be taking dog nose glands, hooking them up to a computer chip, and sniffing out cancer, baby. We're gonna get so much cool shit in the next decade medically. It's not even going to be funny now that we're kind of starting to manipulate genes and genetics like computers. Oh, it's going to be radical. But yes, they grew tears in a lab, and now I'm suggesting that we do the same thing with nose glands from animals who have really powerful olfactory receptors, so that we can potentially train it to sniff things out like COVID-19. Yes, they taught dogs how to sniff out COVID-19. Cancers, rectal cancer, breast cancer, any sort of cancer, because they each have that unique order. Let's do it. If anyone is even interested in this, has connections to people that do it, please reach out or help fund it, because that is some dope shit. Making e-noses to sniff out cancer, because fuck cancer, dude. Fuck cancer. Moving on, though, next story that is less on of a happy note and more of a scary note, speaking of science and stuff. There's a new Ebola outbreak happening in Guinea, and currently only 19 people have been affected, so it isn't like a huge outbreak, but it's still an outbreak. It's not an epidemic or a pandemic yet. But in studying the new breakout, scientists discovered that the virus had less genetic variants than expected. So it happened that back in 2014, there was an outbreak in Guinea of the Ebola virus, and now they took this new outbreak and compared it to the old one, and they expected to see over 100 or 150 genetic variants because of the mutating over time in animals, whatever, it happens, as we're seeing with COVID-19. They expected to see more genetic variants, and they only saw 12. Suggesting that this is still kind of the same virus hanging around, which is not good. And so they think that there was a survivor that survived in 2014 that was carrying the Ebola virus hidden in his body. I think it was him, just waiting, and he was still able to infect people with it, whatever, 12 years later, 10 years, what are we, 2014, we're in 2021, so 7 years later. I don't even know if that math is right. Years later, infect someone, hey, years later. It's not good. It's not a good sign at all. And it is showing that there are still other viruses that are able to hide out in our body without us knowing, whether it's in our sex glands, like in our scrotum, or in our eyeballs, which is where this typically happens. And we already know that viruses like herpes do this, and like HIV. And so we're finding more and more viruses that are kind of hiding out or able to figure out like defenses against our immune systems. Definitely didn't say that right. I always try to sound smarter than I actually am. I'm not that smart. But these viruses are hiding out in our eyeballs, and in our vaginas, in our balls, and then they're coming out years later and infecting people. It's not a good sign, but it means that we really need to be vigilant about this COVID-19 stuff, and that we absolutely have to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible. We are in a race against time, vaccination versus variant, with almost all viruses. And that's one of the reasons I was afraid of this thing from the beginning, and why I wanted people to mask up, because every single new person that gets infected is a chance for variants. I think I even talked about it in one of my COVID-19 videos, if you want to check it out on YouTube. But it's not good. It's craziness that Ebola is hiding out. It's just another disease that can hide out in our in our bodies, and evade detection, and then infect people years later through sexual transmission or otherwise. Not cool, Ebola. Not cool at all. Moving on to, I don't even think I said the numbers. Moving on to number 6. Photoshop, more happy news. We're going to do some tech stuff now. Photoshop made a new feature where they can upscale pictures. It's pretty crazy. Upscaling pictures has been very hard traditionally. And so we can see here in this example site that somebody took this original camera raw photo, which is 4,256 pixels wide. And then they upscaled it double to 8,512 pixels. And it didn't lose much quality, if any quality at all, which means that you can take like pictures on your camera phone that might not have the highest resolution, and just with an algorithm, especially from Adobe, upscale them to be really, really large megapixel pictures, meaning super, super high quality. So this software version of upscaling means that our cameras will become even more powerful in the future, whether you have a nice camera like I'm shooting this video on, or just one in your phone that's decent. Although today's decent standards are still pretty amazing. I remember when we had 2 megapixels on cameras, if we were lucky, on like a flip phone. And if you're looking at the YouTube, we got some examples here. So this guy took a picture of his eye. We can see here, and then he upscaled it. It's a very high quality image. And then this is the upscaled version. You can see that it zoomed in with very little loss of quality, so it got bigger. You can still see all of his individual hairs in his eyebrows and his eyelashes. We can see micro hairs that you don't even really notice usually, and even some fusel or some junk on his nose that he could wipe away, some like eye gunk that's still stuck on his nose. It's very impressive. I think it's very cool that Adobe is doing that, and I'm sure that this technology will make its way down into our cameras and phones soon. But speaking of technology that is very cool, number 5. We got new tech from MIT that is able to place holograms in full color holograms using software in like a device. This is actually kind of really hard to explain, and it took me a second to kind of grasp what was going on. But a hologram is pretty much, if you look at your phone, it's flat. It doesn't really have any depth to it. And a hologram is able to create the illusion of depth on a flat surface. On the YouTube video, we have a video of somebody doing this with a turtle. So they took a flat screen and they put it in front of like some fake plants. And then it looks like there's a turtle swimming back and forth on this screen in real time, giving it depth. So you can see it move back into space with a shadow and everything, and then come forward. But really it's just a flat piece of glass that is giving this illusion of 3D space. And that's what they consider to be a hologram. And so this MIT student group has made a new form of hologram using just software and deep learning that is able to be put on like our phone screen to give it depth. So now we can actually start having depth on our phone screen like you would in like a 3D movie. I have behind me a short little image of it, or a short little demo of it. And here we go. So they have this set up on this couch, and then they toggle between 2 different images of the couch. There's one where the background is in focus and one where the foreground is in focus. And in the foreground is this little mouse character, and I think that this little mouse character doesn't actually exist. It's a fake, it's an insert, it's a hologram. And zooming in and out of the picture, it automatically refocuses things so that this fake mouse comes into focus and goes out of focus, creating this very realistic hologram that's not actually there, giving it this illusion of depth. And if they actually had a video version of it, this mouse, I'm sure, could actually move back and forth in space on like a picture of your phone, on your phone, to give it the illusion of depth. It's very cool. I don't know how they're going to use it, but it is making the technology extremely cheap. Computation wise, these techniques were very expensive for a processor in the past, so it took a lot of computing power to generate this. And with this new way of doing it, it takes less computing power, far less computing power, meaning that with just a consumer grade iPhone 7, you can generate very high quality, very impressive 3D holographic images. It's pretty rad. Shout out to MIT guys and gals for creating this, and I'm very curious where it's going to go from here. They'll probably make some pretty cool things. Keeping with the technology theme, we've got number 4. This Headfi system that turns normal headphones into biometric measuring devices. So you can, using your normal headphone jack, you plug it into this Raspberry Pi that they've created, this little chip, and then you put the headphones in your ears, and you have to have in-ear headphones, but you put them in your ears, and then it creates a seal in your cavity, in the ear canal, in your ear cavity. And in this ear cavity, they can sense, using, I guess, the speakers of the headphones, very small vibrations or changes of volumetric pressure, you could say. Hopefully you're following along. So inside of your canal, there's pressure. And if you seal it, there's like a small vacuum, like a bunch of pressure. And they can use the variance in pressure to measure things like your heart rate. So when your ear canal fills with blood, it changes the pressure of the space in your ear between your eardrum and the headphones, and they can measure that. So they can measure your heartbeat with your headphones, meaning we could take these biometric sensors that are generally on your hand or on your wrist and now just integrate them into our headphones with no upgrades. They just do it with a dumb headphone. So you just plug it into their little device and then plug that into your phone and you're ready to go. And then you can start monitoring your heart rate and other, I guess, bodily changes through your headphones. It's pretty radical technology. It's very cool that they kind of thought outside the box to create this. I like it. We're always wearing headphones nowadays. We all got these the AirPods in. You see everyone walking around with them in-ear headphones. It's a very radical idea to use headphones to measure stuff. It could also even sense changes from the outside. So if you tap the headphone, it turns it into a smart device, and you can pause, play, skip tunes with no actual real additional technology other than this device. Pretty radical, pretty cool. There's a picture of it if you want to see it. It's nothing special to see, but just a small purple chip with headphones plugged into it. But pretty cool that they're doing this, turning headphones into kind of a body reading device. Other next things here, next technological things. Deepfakes is something I've talked a lot about on my channel. I have a couple videos about deepfakes if you want to check it out. I'm not going to go into it right now here on the podcast or the show, but pretty much what's happening is there is people generating fake profile pictures of people, fake pictures of people. They're just generating them using computers, using deepfake technology. And so if you go to a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, I think that's what it is. Yeah, thispersondoesnotexist.com. It'll just randomly generate faces over and over and over as many times as you press refresh, and it's just fake people that do not actually exist. And they're very hard to detect, these deep fakes. And a lot of Russian hacker bots and a lot of people who want to stay anonymous online are using thispersondoesnotexist.com to set their profile picture with fake people. And a new technology has come out where they can use the reflection of the light in people's eyes. So if you look right now on YouTube, you can see probably that I'm using a ring light because you can see the reflection of it in my eyes. And there's a certain way that your eyes reflect light that is real. And on a lot of these synthesized people, the light reflections are totally incorrect. And so they can actually sense a deep fake based on the light reflections generated in people's eyes. If this is good or not, I don't know, because they might be able to then overwrite this algorithm now that it's out there and they've published their study about it. These deepfake generators can just switch their algorithm to make better eyes, or even integrate their algorithm in it to beat it. But it is interesting that we can detect these microscopic changes or these micro anomalies that show us that something isn't real. It's nice that we see people also building technology to fight against deepfake stuff, because it will be a problem here moving forward as we become a more digital species. So new AI tool detects using eye light. Number 3, we got LED clothes. This is pretty rad. It comes from China. They made this LED fabric, light emitting diode fabric. There's been attempts at this before, but the problem is if you wash it or bend it or whatever, it usually gets damaged. And these scientists have created a new version of that LED clothing that works if the textile is bent, if it's washed. They've tested it in thousands of cycles of bending and washing, I think. It says after 1,000 cycles of bending, stretching, and pressing, the performance of the vast majority of the electroluminescent units remains stable. In addition, the brightness also remains stable after 100 cycles of washing and drying. So they did wash and dry it. And if you see the video or the picture, it is a roll of fabric that is very, very brightly lit. It looks like the fabric is a screen itself. And one cool part about this is that they actually hooked this up to Bluetooth as well. So they could control what is on these pieces of fabric. This big screen pretty much is a big roll of fabric that's a screen. It's a damn bendable fabric screen. And they hooked it up to Bluetooth to be able to control it. And they did cool things like showed text messages on the sleeve of a jacket or coat. So you could get text messages on your sleeve and read them, do whatever, project images onto your clothing. It's pretty fucking cool, if I'm not gonna lie here. It's pretty fucking cool. And if you combine it with something like these non-fungible token artwork, you could actually project, I don't know, like the Gap could sell NFTs of certain designs, and you could project them on your clothes. You could hook it up to do, I don't even know, all sorts of cool stuff. Maybe you have a keyboard that you can interact with. If it can also do pressure sensitive stuff. This is so cool, finally turning our clothes really into screens or into light emitting diodes, into light fabric, electronic fabric, whatever. I don't actually think that it can sense like microscopic, or not microscopic, but changes in like the pressure or bend of it to make it interactive. But it's a first step, and it's pretty cool regardless. So that's going to be coming soon, is these light emitting diode clothes. Man, I wonder if I can get my hands on some in some way from China and start messing around with it and developing cool products for like EDM shows. So cool. So cool. Then we got the last two stories here. Amazon is gamifying their warehouses. If you aren't aware of this, they are integrating like a UI GUI type of thing where employees in like a picking section where they're organizing objects can see a little race car racing around a track, and depending how good they're performing, the race car moves faster or slower, which earns them points, which they can then trade in for like Amazon swag or virtual pets or all sorts of other things. And I'm really not sure how to feel about this, honestly. I think it's cool when a company makes work more fun, especially in these jobs that are a little bit, I don't know, more automatable. Eventually they're going to be replaced by robots, by including mini games and gamifying things, like literally including mini games, turning your life into a mini game or your work into a mini game. But at the same token, like, it's well known that Amazon does not take care of their workers very well, right? And that they are against unions and they don't pay them enough, and it's a dangerous job. They don't let them take piss breaks. Like, there's a lot of negative reporting around Amazon warehouses. And then now they're like, hey, we're also going to measure you through a game. Man, that is super awkward. That is really awkward. But at the same time, if they're making it more fun and enjoyable for the employees, like, I can't knock it. And it's completely elective. You don't actually have to participate in the game. You don't have to play. But if you do, you obviously get some swag bonuses and other stuff. I mean, it would also be nice if instead of like, hey, earn 15 Amazon swag bucks by busting your ass for 24 plus hours or 40 hours this week. If instead they're like, hey, you earned enough points in the game, like, here's a bonus, like an actual monetary bonus, not just an Amazon water bottle or sweater. Or it's like, hey, if you earned enough points or whatever in the game, you have the option to have, I don't know, a free doctor visit even. Like, for the US, that's a big deal. A lot of people don't have healthcare coverage. So like, hey, you earned a free doctor visit. I don't really like that idea either in my head. Like, it just sounds better than here's a water bottle, you know? Or a sweater or whatever it is. I guess around Christmas time you can compete to earn video game consoles and other like high-end electronics, but still that's not good enough to me. I would say make it an actual bonus, or like you get double pay for the next week or something incredible for the employees. Really take care of them. I do like that they're doing it. I think that incentivizing people and making work more interesting and fun is a good thing, but yeah, the way that they're doing it with the swag bucks and prizes, not cool at all. If you are an Amazon worker, let us know how that's going and how you like it. They're rolling it out nationwide in America pretty soon. And last up, a very interesting story for me personally, for some reason, is Wikipedia fighting against Google, Apple, and others for using its content. So as you know, Wikipedia is an open source donation-based business. They compile articles about everything in the world. It's an open source encyclopedia. People could sign up to be editors. Anybody can add an article. And then they take donations throughout the year. You've probably seen it pop down. If you've been on Wikipedia, it asks you for donations at some point during the year, and that's how they survive, on these donations. But big companies such as Google, and if you're on the YouTube, I'm going to show you an example, will use Wikipedia for free content without actually crediting, or not, they are crediting, without actually paying them. It's a free, information for Google to display to people. So I looked up what is the midterm election 2018 on Google, and it returns at the very top this little snippet, which is a snippet from Wikipedia, and it says blah, 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 blah. Here's the information about the midterm 2018 election. Is from Wikipedia, and then I could click on that and be linked to Wikipedia. But Wikipedia doesn't get a kickback for them grabbing a snippet from Wikipedia, and sometimes it has pictures. Just depends on what exactly you're looking for. I did Google examples of this, so there's another example here, the common cold. They actually have a picture of the virus of the common cold, and they're just taking that right off of Wikipedia and then not giving them payment for it. And Wikipedia says, you know what, enough is enough. We're the biggest open source website of information in the world. We're the 8th trafficked website year over year. We're not going anywhere, and we're donation based, and it's time you guys pay us. And I really think this was kicked off from Australia. The Australian government recently challenged Google and other search providers to pay news publishers money every time they show one of their results. It was legislation that I think was being fought against but went into law. And so now Facebook pulled out of Australia because they don't want to have to pay, and Google, I guess, is saying, hey, we'll strike a deal and we'll pay news publishers for borrowing their content. And now Wikipedia is like, yeah, we want some of that same money. And you know what? Good for Wikipedia. These big companies should be paying out other companies for using their content and using their shit. If I'm an advertiser on Google, I have no problem with a piece of that going to Wikipedia if it's going to help, sustain this awesome open source knowledge information that we all benefit from every single day. I don't know how something like YouTube could do something similar. YouTube, it is owned by Google, but it is also an open source kind of place where you can learn almost everything you want. A lot of people are watching this on YouTube right now, and if they need to pay out news places or whatever for borrowing their content instead of Google just monetizing other people's stuff, I think that's awesome. They do have the ad program on YouTube. It's just not the same. But yeah, Wikipedia kicking off and piggybacking off of this Australian legislation. I hope that they win because, yeah, fuck Google, fuck Apple, fuck all these big places that are just taking content, especially from a donation-based place. If anyone deserves some payout, it's the Wikipedia or Wikimedia Foundation, whatever you call it. I think it's great. So Amazon, Google, Apple, whoever, time to pay up, boys. Wikipedia is pissed. They contacted their cousin Vinny, and he's coming with a baseball bat and a pair of concrete shoes. It's time to pay your boys, Wikimedia. And that's it. That was the top 10 stories from this week. If you like my content, just a reminder to hit subscribe here on YouTube or on your podcast application, or even go to tbdk.substack.com to subscribe to my newsletter version. It would help me out. And if you do enjoy my content, think about donating through Anchor. If you're listening on podcasts, you can open up the show notes and subscribe for every time I put out a new show. In the meantime, help me grow this channel, send me to a friend, or watch some of my other YouTube videos so that I can eventually start monetizing this stuff and bringing you better content. Until then, though, I hope you learn or do something cool, because you know what? I love you.